So with deep relaxation, um, more and more when I do deep relaxation, it reminds me of my teacher, Reb Anderson's teachings about the first paramita and how all the paramitas kind of flow into each other, you know. But the first one is generosity, and that, you know, the nature of our being and the nature of our Buddha nature is unconditional acceptance of all of our experience. And he talked about it as like saying yes to everything, cultivating that attitude of saying yes to everything, even though it's very difficult in certain parts of our life. And we're all kind of dealing with difficulties here in a different way. Uncertainty about what the quality of life is going to be, you know, for here in our country and for the world. So he talked about, you know, cultivating the attitude of, thank you very much, I have no complaints to whatever experience is happening, you know. And so I'm always reminded that Buddha's teaching is that, you know, bodhisattvas are always thinking about how to recognize, help other people recognize the reality of our shared being. And that, you know, he touched the earth and said, on the morning of his great enlightenment, he touched the earth and said, I and all beings together attain the way. And he said that when we practice wholehearted generosity, we learn how to cultivate that being generous to everything, generous to every experience, the unconditional welcoming of every experience. And also including that welcoming a deep acceptance, welcoming Buddha's deep acceptance of us as individuals, because we do have this deep conditioning that we are a separate individual body-mind, you know. Welcoming that, as well as welcoming all beings, because that's what opens the door. Suzuki Roshi said, you know, we breathe in from the outer world, and we breathe out from the inner world into the outer world. But both the inner world and the outer world are boundless. And boundless means dimensionless, you know, beyond vast. It's just, there just isn't any limitation, you know, beyond all the confines of our experience. And so he said that is, you know, Reb quoted Wang Po saying, meeting with complete wholehearted generosity is without any attachment to the mind. And that is total deep relaxation. You know, and because and last week we talked about Thay's teaching of I'm not the body. So it's nice to kind of counter that with teaching of fully inhabiting the body, because realizing that our essential being isn't confined in the body, isn't located in the body, that our true identity totally includes the body, but we talked about how the physical body is actually already totally blended in with everything else. So when Buddha touched the earth, he wasn't touching something outside himself made of matter. He was touching the spirit, the support of our essential being that supports us all. It's the, you know, it's the ultimate dimension, Thay calls it.
Yeah.
But it's compassion and love is also the ultimate. It's the ultimate compassion and love, because it's not bounded. It's not bound by any conditions. or experiences. So we learn through generosity, we learn to offer all of our experience. We receive it. We receive that vast nature, that ever-present nature of our Buddha nature. Offer it, and the deep relaxation with the body helps us to realize that that's the source of that vital energy that we feel when we relax our body and appreciate it. It opens our heart. I appreciate my heart a lot, and I'm beginning to realize that I need relaxation is very important, and so I'm losing my guilt about feeling relaxed because my heart is leaking. It's the valve, the aortic valve is leaking more. And the doctors don't tell me this, maybe because I seem relaxed to them or something. They don't, because their model is the separation of body and mind. So they don't tell me, well, don't make sure you're not stressed because that'll make it leak more. But I know from all these years of studying body-mind relationships, that if I'm stressed about Trump, or if I'm stressed about my kids, or I'm stressed about the future, that's going to make it leak. That's going to stress the body, and it'll put stress on my heart, and it'll leak more, right? So I try not to take it as, okay, so relax, like, okay, you relax. I don't, trying to relax is kind of a contradiction in terms, if you think about it. It just receive our nature, receive the Buddha nature that we are. And so we practice not to block that free flow of our life force, our deep aliveness, and which opens up when we let it flow more freely. Then it opens up the realization, like we talked about last week, that the presence looking out of our eyes, we see different things. There's differences in what we experience, what we see, hear, feel. But the presence that's looking out of our eyes, it's looking out of everyone's eyes. It's the same being, essential being. So we say there's 8 billion. There's 8 billion dances. We're all dancing our life. The life force is dancing through us, but there's only one dancer, and that's we can call it Jesus, you can call it Buddha, you can call it God or cosmic consciousness, but whatever you call it, it's not perceivable or describable by our dualistic mind. But it intimately pervades everywhere and everything. And so that intimacy, in Zen, there's a koan that the master and the student are having a conversation, and I think that the monk asks the master, what's the most important thing? And the master says, the most important thing is to find out the most important thing. And the monk says, okay, well, what's the business behind these robes? Underneath these robes, what is the most, he says, maybe it's the most important thing. It includes our body, but it's more than just our body, he's saying, But underneath the robe, what's really there? There's the physical body there, but what's really there is what he's asking. And the master replies, intimacy. And so that intimacy is the recognition of our shared being. So that's about all I feel like I want to say. Maybe we can have some discussion. I know Kat had some questions. Maybe we can discuss some of those things. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Kat, we had a visit from Adrian before you got here.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, she says she's dying. She wants to be with her husband. She doesn't want to stick around.
Yeah.
She turned 87.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Was she kind of coming to like really say goodbye, or was she, just touching bases, do you think?
I think she wanted us to know that she's okay.
Mm.
And I think she's pretty firm in what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
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 Just doesn't want to be here anymore.
Mm. I wish I'd been there to show my face and send some love.
Well, I can give you her contact.
I have her email. I'll reach out.
Yeah.
I've written her, so.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. I love that deep relaxation. I think that sending loving awareness to the self just has always felt natural to me. Even though I have a lot of problems with relaxation and feeling deserving of relaxation, I think that you were kind of intimating with Roger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gotten me through some of my most difficult times. I know whenever I was doing radiation on the table, you have to wear this mask that is really close to your face and pins you really tightly on a table. It's very claustrophobic and uncomfortable. And you have to sit still for like 30 minutes. And sometimes I was like really upset with my brain. And then I would really thank my eyes and every other part of my body that was functioning, and it really made me feel better.
Yeah.
So I found a lot of times whenever I'm frustrated, executive functioning messes with me. And so if I'm having a hard time making a schedule or something like that, I thank the other parts of my body that are doing well that day and like took me on a 3-mile run or something like that. So there's a lot. Gratitude is so powerful, I think, and I always really appreciate that meditation and also how slowly you take it. I guess Roger was sort of talking about, I was going back to Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart, and I was having a hard time with it because I can't remember the chapter, but she's talking about sort of like ego loss. And in my experience, it was making me feel sort of like forced, like we should be striving towards this ego loss. And it's that striving, of course, that always makes me feel uncomfortable, especially if you've ever experienced ego loss. It's really terrifying. I have before doing psilocybin as a medicine like multiple times, and it's really distressing actually. I'm not mature enough, I don't guess, to get there. And so there's something simple about Thai's teachings that I've always loved, just in terms of resting and loving awareness. And that's really intuitive. And so I was asking Roger some questions about sort of, are those at odds with one another? Is this like this ultimate groundlessness something that we should be working towards? Or, I think you've answered my question tonight, but that's what I was sort of struggling with the other evening.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I think we all would struggle with ego loss. I know it was 10 years ago now. I have a good friend who used to be a basketball player, and he became an ayahuasca shaman. And I did a couple of ayahuasca ceremonies with him, and the last one I did was 10 years ago. And I really felt the ego loss was like, I didn't realize how powerful that medicine can be,
Yeah.
And so I wasn't ready for it. And I was in hell for about an hour or so. I don't know how long it really was, but, and then finally I realized you just have to let go. I was actually at the point of like, well, if I'm supposed to die, because, he told me that there's another name for ayahuasca, and I don't remember what the term is, but it means because you're going to die you're going to experience ego death when you take it. If you really are serious about the healing prospects of it, you need to realize that there is something beyond you, a bigger point, and you're going to lose what you think you are, And at some point, and even though it was very painful, and I never want to do it again because I don't feel like I need it. But I really got a deep experiential realization that letting go really means letting go of all self-concern. You know, it's okay if you're going to die, you're going to die. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And there was that resistance there, and then I realized that it's going to be okay. And then I realized that there is that ultimate support is there beyond what we think our ego is or what we think the self is, you know. And the deep relaxation opens the heart to more fully receive that, you know. And it is groundless, but it's also, because it pervades everything, it's totally free. And so there doesn't have to be something solid there to hold you, because you know, like, part of Thay's teaching is letting go of all notions, and even above and below is part of, you know, there's no above and no below, because space is boundless, and that space is just our essential being. It's a construct. There's actually is nothing that's graspable, and so there's no, you know, in terms of groundlessness, there's no below to fall into, and there's no above to go up to. We're just here, which isn't a place in space. It's just the limitless reality. And so the compassion and the love is also without limits. Yeah.
I feel as though I've had many small awakenings, which can actually add up to eventually a lot of changes. And I am changed. I realize that. I am changed. So why do I need the big one? It made Adyashanti sick. It made him sick. You know? I mean, he retired. It can be that way. And is that what I want? Do I want that? I would like to just let go of myself. I had an interesting experience with a student who didn't want, he didn't like Thay's teachings because he said they weren't non-dual. And he was with a non-dual teacher, and I thought afterwards how ironic that he's separating Thay's teachings from the non-dual teachings that he's getting. So he's actually demonstrating how we refine everything, how we separate everything. When he thinks he's on the right path, but he's still young, he'll find out.
Oh, that's Bo. That was Bo. Right?
Yeah.
You remembered him.
I think of him.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he sort of was looking down on these teachings. He was part of our Sangha. And I always felt that he thought he knew more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And in so doing, that was all ego. It was all separation, you know. Yeah. So what is non-dual teaching? How mm-hmm. on earth would that be in some kind of it's parallel to Thay's teaching, non-dual teaching, Thay's teaching. It's all the same.
Yeah.
As I see it, anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Always moving in the river of impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bo had a good heart, though. He was.
Oh yeah, he had a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Part of being.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And part of his, you know, it's part of being young. Like the story I read about the young monk and his master.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody want to weigh in on that? Or your own thing?
You know, I've always got something to share.
Go ahead.
Great to see everyone tonight. And I appreciate the meditation and the teaching. First off, the relaxation. One of the things that I initially used that for, and I still do, is to make space for pain and physical discomfort. Um, I've got, arthritis, and I just had an MRI to hopefully be able to help me find out what's going on with my lower back. But the fact is, I'm out of warranty and things are breaking. They're not falling off yet, but they're breaking. And I'm comfortable with that. It's okay. It's not a mistake. It's life. But making space for physical pain, I witness how the other parts of my body tend to try and curl around that and form a cocoon. My body becomes tense around the pain. And although my back hurts, my legs are tense. My upper back is tense. My abdomen is tense. And I become, emotionally and psychologically tense. And I start to come from that place. I start to express from that place. And I find that that is so with other forms of wounds, of the wounding that I experience when things are simply other than what I would like them to be. I tend to form this hardening shell, and I cease to be open and vulnerable. I cease to be open to the possibilities that exist within things as they are. And so I try to protect this fantasy thing. And one of the things that Pema Chodron taught me through her books and her audio and all that stuff, I've never had the good fortune to meet her, was that groundlessness doesn't mean that something that is real somehow no longer does exist. It's that my conceptions about things aren't reality. My thoughts aren't about reality. And that groundlessness is when I start to let go of my insistence that those concepts about things come into real form and that reality conform to my desires about it. I'm grateful in part to the 1970s and early 80s when I had a great deal of experience with experimenting with a variety of hallucinogens. I wouldn't want to go back and do that again. But I did come away with it with what a lot of what I've read and what I've heard, a lot of really respected meditators and teachers have found is that it's just not what you think. We come away from those experiences realizing that there is something else going on, and my perceptions and thoughts about it aren't very accurate. Because we've seen it go really oddball, and I'm having these visions, I'm hearing these things, I'm feeling these things, but I know for a fact it's not really happening. Mm-hmm. An evening in a Navajo sweat lodge with peyote taught me a great deal about that, and about how the physicality and just the presence of people and various planes of existence are very permeable. It was very interesting. I came away from that totally speechless, which is, I think, a really good place for me to be once in a while. But in order for me to be content, in order for me to be content as a person, I have to accept that my experience is complex. I am an entity that can hear and can see and can taste and feel things within a particular realm. I have no idea what's happening in China right now, firsthand. I can't experience that, and yet I'm not separate from it. I can't experience what's happening in the core of Venus, but I'm not separate from it, and so we talk about becoming enlightened, becoming awakened, and so forth, and I think it has something to do with becoming comfortable with having one foot in one realm and one foot in the other, that we are this absolute and relative. We are not separate, they're not dual. Mm-hmm. And the more I come up with the idea of striving, the more I put myself off to the side of someone who has to work to achieve. The harder I work, the more powerful the concept of I, the more that ego witnesses the striving and perceives this great distance between where I'm at and what I'm striving for. And so the harder I work, the further away I get from that perceived goal. And yet relaxing into it, I realized what, so many masters have taught us is that we're always already there. And so Judith was talking about having heard about these awakened masters. And I was thinking, well, has anybody spoken about you? Because, or the kid down the street or whatever it may be, because we're always already there. We just have to give ourselves permission to be there and stop the striving. And it's not in our nature to do that. Many of the Buddhist teachings, we hear about these, especially the Tibetan masters, where Naropa and Tilopa and Marpa and all these people went through all these trials and built these, tall castles or towers and got slapped with a shoe or a fish or whatever it may be, and just went through so much until finally they were totally exhausted and said, I can't do this anymore. I give up. And at that point, they relaxed into being. They couldn't do, there was no space for doing anymore, and they realized, wow, this is it. All the doing was done. So many of our teachings have us doing so much so that we're ultimately exhausted. We finally give ourselves permission to rest in total exhaustion, and whether it be physical or emotional, psychological, and rest in that space, and there it is. I'm grateful to have been exhausted briefly once in a while, and kind of had some, flashes here and there that did not involve, performance enhancing drugs. So I know there's a hint of something more, and I know I'm not separate from it, and I'm much more relaxed in my being than I have ever been. I'm just sad that it took so long to get here, but I'm grateful for the path that I've been on. A lot of people would have recommended something else, but I can't be ungrateful because it took what it took to be where I'm at, and I'm okay with that. So anyhow, it was great to see Adrienne, and I'd love to hear any news. I think personally, as far as her, what I got from her tonight is she's very comfortable where she's at and where she feels that she's headed. She seems to have some discomfort when it comes to our discomfort in missing her or losing her. And for my own sake, I think the best message I can send her is that, I love you, and it's, this is the process that I'm going through, that she's going through, is not different. It's not wrong. It's just what is. And, I'm grateful for that. It's okay, because much sooner than later, I'm going to be where she's at, and I hope to be able to do it with as much grace. So, love you all. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. That's beautiful. It's interesting, the striving. That's why in non-duality they have the slogan that the notion of doership is bondage, and the way Rep talked about it was that it's like sometimes we have to struggle and go through all those difficulties and strivings, and in order to realize that we can't do it by ourselves. But when we recognize our shared being with all beings, then the power of all beings together, realizing it and striving, is so much greater than any personal effort we could ever make. So we can fully engage and fully appreciate the freedom that our body allows us to share, with others. And that power of all beings together, we can't do it by ourselves, especially since we don't really exist as a separate being, So, as separate beings, we have about as much power over what's going to happen with the rest of our life as we do, as much power as we do as controlling the movement of the stars. But when we realize the power of all beings together, then that power has no boundaries. It has no limits in what can be done.
Thank you, Roger. That's a lovely way to end this session. Really beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you, Lee. Thank you so much for your sharing. So I guess we'll close then. Okay? Unless somebody else wanted to say something. Okay.